There are a few things to look out for that will be strong indications of whether you have a healthy family life or not so much. And I know every family looks different, operates different, acts different, but some things are just objectively incompatible with a healthy family life. I know when I identified and changed a few of these things, the atmosphere in my home improved dramatically. So stick with me. I'm going to help you identify some of these issues and tell you exactly how I dealt with them. Before we jump into some of these issues that I identified in my own life, let me just say that your wife is more than likely going to be the most helpful asset you have in identifying your shortcomings. If she's anything like my wife, hopefully she's gracious in pointing out your mistakes, but hopefully she's honest and has enough courage to do it. And one of the things that my wife pointed out to me that was creating somewhat of a toxic environment in our home was just the amount of yelling or aggression that I was exhibiting towards my kids. Where I grew up and where I come from, yelling was an acceptable form of communication between those in authority and those under authority. And even in my career as a firefighter, that was just kind of normal. If you screwed up, you get yelled at. If somebody's irritated or frustrated because you messed up, the proper expression is to yell. And I saw a lot of things get accomplished by being yelled at. I changed a lot of my behaviors because I was yelled at. But what I didn't realize until I became a parent, and even then it took a little while, is that if compliance is the goal, then maybe yelling is the right thing to do. It's a good way to get what you want, to intimidate and bring fear and control over somebody else through aggression. But what if the goal isn't just compliance? And this is where my wife really helped me see this. The goal should be connection with your kids, not just obedience and compliance. And so she challenged me a lot to find another way to still get the compliance, but do it through connection. And yelling and aggression does not allow for that connection. There was a book that helped me a lot with this too. It's called Loving Our Kids on Purpose, or Loving Your Kids on Purpose, something like that. The author is Danny Silk. And he had a lot of helpful insights and tips on how to interact with your kids, even when they're being difficult or disobedient, without yelling, to still get what you want, but do it in a way that they are participating, not just being forced. And so I noticed that when I really stopped, I haven't stopped completely, there's still room for improvement, but when I drastically reduced the amount of yelling in our home, the attitude actually improved. My kids actually became more willing to function the way I wanted them to function, to act and behave the way I wanted them to behave. And it's because we had that connection. Additionally, I'd say, not just with kids, but with your wife. My wife and I have never really yelled at each other. And we know some people that's just a normal thing in their home, where they work out disagreements or issues by fighting, like arguing, yelling back and forth. And sometimes you could think, well, that's just their way. But the same thing is true. It doesn't allow for the connection between you and your wife in a healthy way that's going to make room for resolution. Because with yelling and aggression, your focus is winning. And if your focus is just winning, you might be blind to the compromise that's actually needed to give you the desired outcome. So if you notice yourself yelling at your kids, back and forth with your wife, whatever it is, I guarantee you that finding other ways to communicate is going to produce a lot more of a peaceful environment in your home. Another thing to be on the lookout for, especially in yourself, is the unwillingness to own your mistakes, to accept responsibility when you mess up, to take the blame, to apologize. It requires such a massive amount of humility and vulnerability. Oftentimes, it can be really difficult to do that, especially as the head of the household, the leader of the family. You might have this idea that you have to be perfect. But more than that, your family cares about you being humble and honest. And that's going to create much more of a connection and gain a lot more respect than if you never made a mistake, which, by the way, is impossible. You're going to screw up. If you can admit it and own it, not only is that creating a more peaceful and secure home environment, but you're leading by example. I teach my kids so often to own their mistakes. It's going to be better if you just own it. Whether it's trying to avoid a consequence or discipline or just feeling embarrassed, we have this drive for self-preservation. And we think we're going to be better off if we can just avoid looking like a failure. But truthfully, they're always better off if they just admit the mistake. And one thing I tell them, which is true for me and you and everybody else, if you're unwilling to admit that you've messed up, then how are you ever going to get any better? It's legitimately the first step in improving, is admitting that you have room to improve. And your family will see this in you, and they'll respect you a lot more for it. And the third thing you want to look out for, which is actually going to be harder to notice than the others, you're really going to have to pay attention to the behavior and the atmosphere in your home. But it's when everybody is constantly like walking on eggshells, because that's an indication that nobody feels safe or secure or at peace or rest. There's this tension that's just constant in the home. And that could be for a lot of reasons, but in my experience, the main reason was just overwhelming and almost constant criticism. You hear people say all the time as they grow up, I could never do anything good enough. I was never able to meet my dad's standard, or my mom always expected more from me. Nothing I did was good enough. Typically, that's going to come from too much criticism in relation to the amount of affirmation they receive. Because I don't think criticism is bad. There's a place for that, and it's actually really important. But if it so outweighs the affirmation that they never feel good enough or they never feel secure in the home, you've got a problem. And this relates to the goal I mentioned in the first one, which should be connection. I don't want to just create honor roll student, athletic all-stars, high achievers, so I'm constantly on their case about every little thing. That's not my goal. My goal is connection with them. So the criticism needs to take a back seat to the affirmation. If your kids are always nervous around you, or they don't open up and act free to be themselves, check yourself. Pay attention. Are you criticizing too much? Are they getting the message that nothing is good enough, that your standards are impossible to meet, and that perfection is the requirement? If so, you need to do something about that, because not only is it unhealthy, but it's unrealistic. So up the affirmation. Find any way, any place, any scenario where you can fit in a compliment, even for stupid things that seem silly or insignificant. Find room to balance out that criticism with affirmation. Well, that's going to do it. I hope that was helpful to you. I hope that you'll take a minute to pause and kind of take an assessment of the environment in your home. See if you're guilty of any of these things like I was and still am from time to time. It's your responsibility as the leader of the home to set the tone, to set the atmosphere. And if it's toxic or unhealthy, then it is up to you as the father to do something about that. And if you've got teens and you're looking to build stronger connection with them, check out this video up here. I think you'll find it helpful. Take care, guys.